Greetings of peace, brothers and sisters. In behalf of Bari Meditation Center, we warmly welcome everyone. And everyone means we have the Arabic group translation with Dr. Awatif doing the translation. We also have a group who is connected in the YouTube, and of course to all of us here. Your loving presence is deeply, highly appreciated, especially at this time. And this goes most especially to our guest speaker, Eric Reste, Eric Reste, who will share his insights, his wisdom on the topic, facing your fears, which is so appropriate at this time. So before I give the floor to Eric, let me share some background about our speaker tonight. Eric Lereste has been with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, Radio Canada, for more than 30 years. As journalist and producer, he worked for the main television news and current affairs programs within the French services. Along with this promising career, he always maintained a special interest for spirituality. He is a meditator for the past 35 years and currently the Canadian coordinator of the Meditation Center. So without much ado, please join me in welcoming Eric Lereste to help us deal with our fears, to face our fears. So very warm welcome, Eric.
Thank you very much, and so happy to join you. So hope you can hear me well. Sound is good? You can see me? I don't see anyone, but I will take a moment to imagine that I can see you. And I know now these new ways of doing are quite unique. We could have done it years ago, but before it was complicated. I needed a plane ticket, go somewhere, have a few days, taking rest, visiting, having to tour the city. Now, just with a click, and we are traveling across the world. So very happy to join all of you today. I know this is evening time, I think, for you. Here in Montreal, it is lunch hour. So technically, I'm at work. This is actually my office, my new office for the past 6 months. I've been working from home now, like most people at the moment. And yes, thank you for this introduction. I'll just share with you just a few thoughts. And I know I have to speak slowly. I just realized there is translation. There might be some mics on at the moment, so maybe we need to mute a few who have their mics on. I get some feedback, but otherwise, yeah, I'll introduce myself a little bit more. And normally I speak very fast, so I'll slow down, and so the translation can be a bit easier, hopefully. So I came in contact with the Brahma Kumaris about 36 years ago. I was in my youth at the time. I was a young adult here in Montreal. And at the same time that I discovered kind of a spiritual journey, I could say, at the same time, I became a journalist for CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. It's the public broadcaster here in Canada. And I was very young. I was early 20s, and everything was new. I never thought I would be interested in spirituality. And I never thought I would be a journalist either. I was studying to be a veterinarian. I wanted to pay attention to the animals, the animal kingdom. But for all strange of reasons, there was an opportunity in the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. And for a strange reason, I became a journalist. Then I became a producer for radio, then television, national television. And I was very fortunate to be offered incredible jobs in CBC. And I've been able to work with some of the best programs in television, some of the most stimulating people I met in my career as well. I was responsible at some point for the evening newscast at 10 o'clock at night. And I don't know if it's the same in your countries, but here this is the main news hour, or it used to be. Now with the web, things have changed. And it was quite stressful, to be honest, to have to be responsible for such a big team, and the 10 o'clock news in the evening with the main anchor, and the impact also in the society. And I know that sometimes we talk about stress, but really stress is another form of fear, isn't it? It's a way to deal with fear, which creates stress. So I'll talk about it, but I just want to set the context that although I'm quite usually a smiling face and I'm kind of easygoing in my life, tend to be fairly light. And this morning I was thinking, do I have any fear? You know, what am I going to talk about? Because I don't relate very much to this notion of having, I would say, obvious or apparent fears. But I had to deal with a lot of issues in my career, in my job, that kind of connect with this fear in some point. So as much as I was evolving in the CBC, enjoying my work, and the beauty of being a journalist and a producer is crafting the reality so other people can be more informed about what's happening in the world. And I know we're accused all the time of being very negative. So I had the privilege to be able to work on some of the programs on television that are offering a spiritual view or human view or a view based on values, not just the news, but also what we call current affairs or documentaries. So I've always tried to bring some hope, to bring something positive in what I do. So that was my professional journey, which is still happening. I'm actually officially at work now. But at the same time, I discovered the spiritual aspect of my life, which I honestly didn't know about. I was fairly religious when I was very young. I was brought up as a young Catholic. And until my mother passed away when I was 14, I used to believe in God, and I was fairly, good boy going to church every Sunday. But when my mother passed away, I felt I was betrayed by God. So I stopped completely any form of belief system. And it's only after many years that on, this kind of spiritual journey, started to think differently about my own life and the whole big picture of what's happening in my life. And I always found that the spiritual part of my life and my professional career, they really became hand in hand, if you want, and they worked very closely together. And I always found that my spirituality helped me tremendously in being comfortable at work without going through so much stress, so much negativity. And it brought more sense to what I was doing at work. And I also find that what I was doing at work brought meaning to my spirituality. Spirituality can be sometimes a little bit vague or a fantasy, or, we put pink glasses and everything is okay and the world is fine and I'm okay, and tend to be a little bit pinky vision of the world with spirituality. But being right on the field with the media, of course, I covered big issues, 9/11 in New York, I was there, and then I covered the events, murders, drama, corruption in the government, and scientific discoveries, human stories. So they really brought me in contact with what we call the real world. But with a spiritual view, I could extract from this reality something that I found was quite useful also for my stories, what I was producing. So they both element, a spiritual aspect of my life and the professional aspect of my life, they both complement each other very, very well. So just to give you a little bit of background where I come from, many years in CBC, journalist, producer, but also very involved in spirituality. I conducted some meditation centers in Canada, in Western Canada, and here in Montreal as well. And today I have this opportunity to work with all the centers in Canada and help, the growth and the development of those centers. When I was thinking about this notion of fear, I think we can all agree today that it's a predominant factor in society. And it could be sometimes maybe positive in a way that we react to our fears. And sometimes we make choices in life so that we overcome our fear. But also, fear can be very destructive. It can be very negative. And I think that fear can overcome sometimes other elements of our being. And before we know, fear can drive us to having a strange attitude towards other people, lacking trust, not having confidence in some of the initiatives that we take. We can have a very suspicious mind, always worrying about being told the truth or not. And so fear can impact my attitude, basically, in my journey or in my way of behaving with other people. So when I was thinking about what kind of fears we're talking about is, I think that some fears come from the outside. COVID, the virus, the fear of contracting the virus. So the fear is out there and it could come to me. If you are in an environment where there's a lot of violence, I'm talking recently to a good friend of mine, and she lives in a part of Montreal. Yes, in Montreal as well, we do have these issues. She lives in a very violent neighborhood. And the other day she was hearing gunfires, people shooting each other with guns. And she's never been exposed to gunfires. And it's very scary when you're hearing the shots happening just next door or a few blocks away from where you live. So this is a fear that comes from outside. The fear when, I don't know if you've ever been on a plane and the plane starts shaking. I remember very well being on an Air France flight coming back from France and coming to Montreal. And it was such a huge storm that we went through in the plane. And I was in a window seat and I could see the wing of the plane. And the wing was really moving like this and curving. And I was just thinking, how much can a wing curve before it breaks? It's not a good thought when you're on a plane. But I was just saying that this wing was really moving a lot. And to be honest with you, there was a strange emotion, and it was fear. There was a certain fear in me, which I was trying to change with my mind. Everything will be okay. Don't worry. The plane has gone through storms much worse than that one before, probably. So the fears that come from outside, very often we can't change the outside. The only thing we can change is how I respond to fear. And of course, we are left with positive thoughts, to be reinsured, understanding better what's happening. Sometimes it's just a matter of getting the right information. But there's not much we can do from, in terms of changing the situation on the outside. But the other types of fear that I think we're dealing with are the fears that come from within. And very often those fears are generated by myself. I create those fears all by myself, sometimes even with no reasons. And I even create the reasons why to have fear. I remember for me, one of the fear I had a long, long time ago was public speaking, believe it or not. No, it's easy. I'm just talking to myself basically on a computer, and I'm trusting that if nobody can hear and if there's no connection, somebody will tell me, but I think it's fine. And I used to really be very, very nervous before speaking in front of an audience. And even sometime in a small group, we'll be in a circle, and then we just had to introduce ourselves or say a few words. And I remember very well sometimes being okay, and then I would see that it will soon be my turn. And just before it comes to me, there will be some kind of stress, fear, anxiety, negativity, and I will be very, very tense, very almost unable to speak properly. And so I had to really work on it, and I knew it was not going away on its own. There was no reason for me to have that fear. So I had to analyze, and I'll come back to this particular example later on. But there was a whole work that needed to be done internally to not just rationalize my fear so I can disconstruct the fear, but I had to find another ground to stand on so that I could go into the same situation and not recreate the fear. I remember in school and universities, we can call it fear, anxiety, stress, worries. I think we can talk about it a bit later, but they all touch the same emotional response in the self. And either we label it as a fear or as an anxiety. I think they're connected. Often we have anxieties because our fears are there. So I remember in university, the fear of failing, the fear of receiving the result of my exams and the result being not good, the fear of having to meet my dad afterwards with the result of my exams. If you make the list of fears that are potentially in the self, we can find quite a lot of those, and they are not of the same caliber. Some are small fears, some are big fears. I would actually challenge all of us right now to think just for a moment and to think of maybe 2 or 3 types of fears that we can identify. I'm wondering if you would like to do that for a minute or two, just to think a little bit about what would you call a fear that you experience, not from outside, but one that you create within yourself. Is it a fear of failing? Is it a fear of confronting? Is it a fear of how people will think of you or what they will say about you, public opinion? Would you be able to put a label on the fears? And I see some are responding with the fear of the unknown. What are the fears that we have to deal with? If you don't know the fear, you may look for the, how to call it, the byproducts of the fear. So your stress. If you feel that you don't have any fear, you may want to think about what makes you feel stressed. When do you feel that you have a tension, that you have anxiety, that you have a form of stress? Sometimes in relationships, sometimes in just thinking about death, your own death, sometimes about the fear of losing somebody. Anyone has that type of fear, that you are so attached to someone that your biggest fear is if the person were to die or to disappear or to divorce? So I'm trying to actually push one of your buttons so you can feel pain. Pain is also sometimes a byproduct of fear. So imagine I'm just trying to push different buttons until you say, ouch, okay. And when you feel ouch, there's something there, right? Someone says fear about not being good at my work. Yeah, the fear of not performing properly. There are so many different aspects connected to those fears. And fears can be sometimes, I would say, destructive in a form which is almost like aspiring. It's almost like the vacuum cleaner. It's a fear that takes away your energy, your emotions, your ability to express, to say, to speak, to be in general. And the fear has that potential to suffocate the energy of the soul, of the being. It just draws and drains the energy. Other fears create the opposite. They are volcanic fears. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. You become a bit crazy. And that fear makes you explode in energy. It makes us say things. It makes us do things that we regret most of the time. So there's some explosive fears and some implosive, I would say, fears. They're not the same. And sometimes those who are very draining our energy and our emotions and our personality, they're the least easy to recognize because we want to oppress them. We want to repress them. We want to hide them. We don't want them to show. And we're very good sometimes in looking good, but feeling bad. Anyone has ever felt that? To just make sure you look good, but you feel bad, which is a kind of being split in ourselves. And it's a pain. If we're not authentic, which means looking the way we feel and the way we are, if there's no authenticity, there's always a pain associated to it. And if not now, the pain will come later. Sometimes we're so good in projecting, pretending, appearing, that we forget that deep within there's emptiness. And after the performance, the emptiness takes over. And from being happy in a crowd, we become lonely alone. From being good performer in public, we become loser in private. So this is a sign of lack of authenticity. But sometimes what it is just my ability to hide my fears because I don't want to confront my fears. Either we're afraid of not performing at work, either we're afraid of not fulfilling the expectations of our loved ones. These fears, either we face them or we avoid them. And if I don't know what to do with those fears, I will avoid them. If I'm active spiritually and I know I want to confront my fears because I don't want to live with fear, then I might want to see them and I might want to face them. But very often we find it easier to just hide them, put them under the carpet. So fear is a very, very complex, dysfunctional feeling inside. And because most of the time we don't know what to do with that fear, then we just, try to go away from it. Or we try to sink that fear in consuming something that will remove the feeling of fear and replace the feeling of fear by a feeling of fulfillment. So drugs, alcohol, movies, sex, material possessions, another car, another phone, a newer phone, a better one, another this, another that, and more, and some food, and new recipes, and more spices. We find all kind of things to, I'm not saying these are bad things. It's just the way we use them. If they're meant to make us feel full, when actually there is fear that makes us feel really empty, then we're cheating. We're just hiding the fear and pretending it's not there by covering it up with an artificial mean that will allow me not to face my fear for another day, for another week, for another month, for another year. But how long can we go away from those fears? And when those fears take over, then we feel that we have anxiety, that we're worried. We find good justifications for our worries and our anxiety. We are worried because we're, feeling stressed because. So there's always a because, which usually is pointing the finger at some external situation. But really, those fears and those anxieties and forms of stress and pain are only due to the lack of strength in the soul, in the self, which makes me feel inadequate in responding to whatever happens. And when there's strength in the self, when there's this power, this energy in the self that I'm hoping to share a little bit in a few moments, but when there's that strength in the self, what will come up? Courage, hope, determination, commitment, honesty, authenticity. There's energy of a doer. We can do things. We can, yes, overcome obstacles. We find there's inspiration. There is an interest for finding solution. There is the antidote of depression, which is zeal, enthusiasm, positive energy. That's when we have powerful energy in the self. And confronted to the same situation, we respond differently. If that energy is not there, it's very easy for the situation to overpower my own being. And then my response is stress, pain, anxiety, fear. I don't know if you agree with that, but to me, this is a little bit the dynamic. Again, I'm not addressing at the moment the fear that comes from outside. If somebody bursts into my apartment right now with a big gun, I might have a deep fear coming up. I'll deal with this maybe later if we have time, but I think the most essential fear at the moment for all of us is to first change the fear that I can actually change in myself, because I generate that fear by myself most of the time. So acquiring an inner strength that will allow me to respond differently. This is for me what I've been my whole journey in spirituality. Recognizing that, one, I'm not having enough spiritual energy to manage the challenges that I'm facing. And I'm just remembering again the translator. I hope that I'm not going too fast. So the first thing is recognizing that I don't have enough spiritual energy. I may have physical energy and be very enthusiastic and big, energetic person. It doesn't mean I have the spiritual energy to confront my inner being. So first of all, I recognize that I'm missing sometimes enough pure energy, spiritual energy, that will give me the strength to face my hidden reality, the one that I'm not usually projecting on the outside, but the one that I'm living all by myself when I'm alone with myself. And then the second aspect is to identify what is the fear, the pain, or the anxiety, the stress. What kind of little spot in the self is it really putting the finger on? Because it could come from so many different aspects. Recently, we were dealing with the mask, and then some places, of course, we have to wear the mask everywhere we go these days. And one person told me, I can't wear the mask. Every time I put the mask, I panic because I was, as a child, somebody tried to suffocate me and they stopped me from breathing and I almost died. So when I put the mask, I have that fear that I'm going to die. And I thought, wow, this is really, I don't have that fear, of course, in my case, but I didn't know that for some people that become a reality. And suddenly, yes, there's an outside situation wearing the mask, but it refers to a very deep old memory that is still vibrant in the self, which hasn't been solved, which hasn't been resolved. So I told her, well, you can't just change the outside world. We can't just, say, okay, I'm not going to wear the mask. I mean, unfortunately, in some places, you have to. and particularly if you're in a hospital or in a place like that. But what about the memory connected to the fear? Can that memory be changed? And of course, I'm not a psychologist, and I totally highly respect the work that psychologists and therapists could do with such a case. And I would leave them, of course, that part, because some part has to be dealt with in that particular field of expertise. But on a spiritual journey, I may be able to address my eternal identity, maybe. Maybe I am invited to meditate. My Google thing, I'm talking to Google, so he's trying to say, I don't understand what you said. Google told me, I don't understand what you're saying. I'll repeat. So this concept that maybe in meditation, I can open my consciousness to this notion that are we really mortal? How do I define death? This is a spiritual, it's not philosophy or psychology. I'm talking spirituality. My body is mortal, of course. The body will die, that's no doubt. But what is within me? Is this going to die? Is it disappearing? Did I exist before this particular body? Will I continue to exist? I'm not going to offer any solution here, but I'm just saying, if we open the consciousness to different ideas, can I change my perspective or my perception of myself? And is changing the perception I have of me going to change how I feel about what's happening to me? And I personally I've done a lot of work, because I almost faced death in my life recently, a few years ago, and a very unfortunate dive, like you normally do when you're 20, not when you're almost 50. But I did a stupid thing, and I was diving in the wrong place, and I thought it was fine because we're diving in the same area for many days and everything was fine. So I presume it was the same thing, but there was a big rock and I broke my head. And it was pretty intense, it was a very, very, very intense moment. Was a fear of dying? At that time, you don't fear anything, because I think there's a natural system in the self which blocks any form of fear. So the energy can be concentrated on the healing part, or on the traumatic moment that we have to manage at that time. So I didn't feel fear at that time. There was a lot of pain, and it was just the thinking of how to deal with pain. But all the doctors keep telling me afterwards that I was a miracle. They say, normally you should be paraplegic, or, somewhere else, but not in your body, because you really hit yourself very, very badly. And it was a big opening, there was surgery and all these things. And the fear came, I think about 3 weeks later. Honestly, it didn't come right away. It came about 3 weeks later, when everything was a bit patched up, and, the pain reduced. There was less of this traumatic moment. I remained kind of stable during the time. I keep joking and being okay. But 3 weeks later, the fear bursted in my head like I didn't even expect it. I didn't even anticipate it. I thought I was, bad thing happened and that's over and I'm okay. And my pride and my vanity was saved, because it was under my hair. So I could save the way I look, The doctors scared me to death by saying, if you had dived just 2 millimeters on a different side, you will have lost your eye and your nose and everything. So my pride and my vanity said, oh my goodness, then I will have lost, whatever beauty was there. And I was in the external was safe. But 3 weeks later, there was an eruption of fear in my head, which suddenly came about the fear of dying. And the thought came, you could have died. And I knew it was true for the past 3 weeks. But as I said, it was a kind of mechanism that didn't allow me to have that thought right at the beginning. Otherwise, I would not have been equipped to deal with that thought. So it came 3 weeks later. And when that fear of dying came, without any control, I mean, it was just like, whoa, I could have died, and that is so bad. And I was shaking. I was having that fear, of almost dying. And I realized, why am I having that fear now? I should have had it 3 weeks ago. I should have had it before diving. That would have been the smartest thing to do. That's where the fear should have been positive. But it wasn't fear before diving. So then I had to realize, how do I deal with that fear? And the thinking was at the time, wow, I have a whole knowledge because I'm a yogi, I'm learning spirituality, I should know all these things. So I had the knowledge that I'm a soul, maybe I'm an eternal being, but I realized that knowledge hasn't deeply imprinted me enough that it can really help me change the feeling in that particular situation. And so what I did was trying to go back into my meditation and re-exploring this dimension of being an eternal being, a being which is not physical, but live in a physical body, a being which is immaterial, but lives in matter, physical matter, the body. And when I explored that experience in meditation, I really felt as if my fear was just melting like snow under the sun. It was just, the fear was gone. And it didn't last very long. I had that kind of fear attack for, I would say, a few days, maybe, when the time I had to process all this. But with meditation, I completely changed that feeling. And it brought me so much closer to what I really needed actually to experience, which is not about fearlessness, but it was more about actually being amazed at the beauty of life. And I found that having love for life removes effectively fear of losing life. I don't know if you follow a little bit. So it's not that I counter fear by teaching me not to have fear, because this could be sometimes not just to neutralize fear by saying, I have no fear. Oh, it's good. I mean, fearlessness is a virtue. It's a beautiful, it's a powerful virtue to be fearless. But we have to make sure that the fearlessness doesn't come from just the desire to not have fear. Because otherwise it's like saying, I don't fear death, but actually I'm so afraid of death that I don't even confront the possibility of dying. So I say, I don't have fear of death. Actually, I do, but I haven't solved it. And so for my experience, it was more like, if I realize the beauty of life and how precious life is, and I can relive every day more intensively, which is exactly what I've done for the past 3-4 years now since it happened, to re-acknowledge every day the beauty of life, I find that now my fearlessness of dying is not connected to I'm eternal and anyway, I'm not going to die. But my fearlessness towards death is I'm one with life. I am life. And I'm never going to lose that appreciation of life. And I don't know if it makes sense to you, or I hope I'm not too complicated, but where I'm getting into it is that when we have to face a lot of our fears are only connected to the fact that we feel that we're inadequate, we're not good enough, we're not able enough. All right? A lot of those fears, I took the fear about dying, which is a big one, fear of being shot by a crazy person. Okay, this is another type, which again, I'm not talking about right now. But the inner fear, I would dare, I'm not a total expert, but for having thought about it a lot and practice, a lot of issues in my life, I think a lot of our fears come simply from this feeling or this view of the spirit or the consciousness that I'm not good enough, able enough, or capable enough. And so we're confronted with a form of lack of self-respect and self-esteem. And if we think about it, if you don't feel comfortable in doing something and there's some pressure on you to perform and to do it right, there's definitely going to be a form of stress or negativity or anxiety, unless we become very honest and we tell people, listen, I'm not qualified for this, and I'm very comfortable to tell you that I don't think I should be doing it, or if I do it, I would ask you to respect the fact that I may not do it as well as you expect me to do it. Honesty will break lack of self-esteem. Honesty is a friend. Lack of self-esteem is damageable for the self. And in my personal, I would say, efforts or exploration or experiences, my inner laboratory, I saw that that situation I described in the beginning, where I'm in a circle, even of people that I know, and it comes my turn to introduce myself and I'm feeling nervous. And I knew I connected it very, very clearly after thinking a lot about it. I realized that actually my fear was initiated by a very strong conviction that all these people are so much better than me. They're so much more qualified than me. They are so better in many ways than if they knew how bad I am inside, deep, deep, deep within me. There was that kind of little worm, little toxic thought that was there, which I would justify and prove by listing all my imperfections. So that lack of self-esteem would generate in me a very strong fear of public speaking. I don't know how it's called in English. It's called the imposter. No, you're a cheat. You're fake. You're pretending to be someone you're not. And so then I thought, okay, what do I do? How do you change that? And I couldn't. I mean, it happened to me over and over and over and over again. It was always there, at work and even at the meditation center. Sometimes I would feel a little bit, shy or unable to speak properly. And I would see these people, and I keep feeling I think I'm putting myself lower than all of them. Externally, I would never do that. I may even have ego that sometimes would take over and make me, like I said earlier, perform in such a way that I may even present myself as if I'm better than anybody else. But that's my ego. But the ego is also there because there's also a lack of self-esteem. So it took me into a long journey of exploring what is self-esteem and what is self-respect. How do I get respect? How do I start to respect myself or to have esteem for myself? And I saw some philosophies or therapies and different approaches that almost wants to sell the idea that you're bad, you're crooked, you're broken, but you should respect yourself as you are. And I thought, I don't know, this is cheap deal. This is okay. But it didn't work for me because I realized I still have deficiencies. And they keep saying, yeah, but Eric, nobody's perfect. You have to accept your imperfections like that. And I thought, not really. Can I have a self-esteem without being worthy of having esteem for myself? Don't I have to gain my self-esteem? You know, in some of the tutorial or in mentoring approaches, or, you know, the old types of teachers where the teacher is the all-knowing, all-powerful, the student has to really struggle before he earns the respect and the dignity of the teacher. So I was wondering, would I need to do something on me so I can have an esteem for myself and a respect for myself, which is real? And that's the path I chose, you know, to say, I have to do something on myself, not just that I need to declare myself okay, and therefore I should have esteem and respect for myself. I should see what is good in me and what is not good in me, which I know and I feel bad about. Well, then I need to change it. And if I don't change it, if I don't do something about it, I'm not going to increase my self-esteem. So I realized that self-esteem and self-respect were a very long-term process of re-taming the self, of relearning to be with myself in a healthy relationship, to recreate a relationship with the self, which is healthy. So it definitely, of course, means at the beginning, yes, I'm broken. Yes, I have many defects. Yes, I have this, which is not good. Okay. Not to be negative about it is good. But now let me work on it. So I create a sense of respect for myself, a sense of esteem for myself, which is real, which comes from a value that I can say, look, I created that value in me, and I'm very proud of it. So if I created a simple value, for example, I'm a bit serious now, and I apologize if it's too too serious, but I tend to be actually more of a joking person all the time, and I tend to joke all the time. And but when I joke, you know, I tend to increase sometimes the reality. I may even mention it, but I would tell you what happened yesterday, but I will increase a little bit what really happened yesterday. So it's more funny. And one day I thought, Eric, is this a quality? Is it good? You know, can you excuse a form of lying by joking? So one day I decided that I'm not going to increase or change, alter reality. I'm going to say as is, but I'm going to be still funny. So I tried to declare myself lie free. No more lies. Even that's not bad lies, but they were a kind of exaggeration, if you want. And I found it tremendously difficult to not lie in joking, because I found my jokes were less funny. So I thought, well, if I'm losing this, you know, so I had to search. And it's a little thing. I'm just giving you an example. So the little thing in me that, you know, it was not that I was a bad person because of that. I was just fooling around a little bit, but trying to be truthful, basically, which is a quality. It took me a little while. It was not easy. And even today, I have to pay attention sometimes, always to remind myself, Eric, you don't need to increase, you don't need to distort. And if you lie for a little thing, one day you will lie for a big thing. So I tried that virtue of being very truthful, you know. So when I developed that virtue, which I think now I've made big progress, not that I was a big liar at all, but changing that little thing naturally increased again. I got extra in my self-esteem, one more layer of self-esteem for a little thing. If I can change a relationship, which is a bit difficult, and if I take this contract, doesn't matter what the other person do, if she changes or not, the person can continue to be as negative as she or he wants, I'm going to change. If you try that and you realize that the relationship can change, even if I'm the only one changing, when I make that little move and I change something in me, for example, for me, it meant looking at someone with whom I had a conflict and starting to change the dialogue or the conversation in my mind. So I started to see a person, and every time I would see the person, I would allow my mind to do a nice meditation commentary for the person. You are someone very actually courageous in your life. You had a lot of courage, and your courage really inspired a lot of people. And because of courage, you really overcome many, not just one word courage, but I allowed my mind to make a big talk about courage for the other person. And I used that many, 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 many times with the intention that when I think of the person, I only want to have good thinking for the person. I know the person is maybe terrible and doing terrible things. That doesn't belong to me. That belongs to her or him. Let me create different thoughts and see what happens. And I really, really swear it was not that easy, but I had to practice. It was just like taking medicine. You don't like some syrup, terrible to take, but you stop coughing. And so I took this medicine, changing my thoughts for the other person. Yes, it was bitter, started to have an effect. Suddenly I started to have a different feeling for the person. Person was still misbehaving or being herself or himself, but it didn't affect me as much anymore. Actually, I started to have a different feeling, a positive feeling. And I realized, and I really, really tell you, this is exactly what happened in many cases. The other person started to be much more respectful towards me, started to be a little bit more kind, not like everything is fine, I love you, Eric. No, but just more, Eric, I know you don't agree, but this is my opinion. And at least there was no negative energy. And when that relationship, and I'm thinking of many actually, those relationships changed. Honestly, what's really, really changed was how I felt about myself. Not a wrong ego, but it was true self-esteem. That I'm a good soul, I'm a good person, and I mean well. I may make mistakes, of course. I may fall, of course. But I started to see the goodness in me, not by convincing myself that I'm good, because I saw it. I demonstrated a form of goodness practically. And if we do that, the self-esteem increases. And now the next impact is that having to confront the person for work, which was the case, knowing we would not agree on certain issues, then there was no fear. There's zero fear. There's actually, on the contrary, a positive feeling, because I knew I can handle difference of opinion. I can handle difference of personalities. So I know this is inconvenient of Zoom. I wish you can just pop up of my computer and I could see you and see your face, but I hope this is okay and then you can get a little bit of something in the whole thing. But I'm just sharing my own personal journey in what I believe has been dealing with the consequences of fear, which is very often my inability to confront situations because they created anxiety, stress, pain, or fear. And I saw that in increasing my self-esteem in many, many different facets of myself, I deactivated a lot of those fears. And the end result is that fearlessness doesn't come from a point of view where it doesn't matter what happened, I don't have fear. It's not like that. It's more like I trust me. I know me. I've seen me doing good things in difficult situations. So I have faith in me that I can respond properly to the situation. So I don't fear the situation. I didn't have to convince myself I don't have fear. I had to demonstrate practically that I can handle complicated, difficult, painful situations. And where this is leading us is actually to what we're going to do now, a few moments of reflection and aware of time. And where it leads us to is actually to be spiritually active. And I come back to that idea I shared earlier, that the spirituality will not be just about making me feel everything is all right if I don't do anything about it. And where the spiritual journey is not just putting pink glasses on the eyes, spiritual journey is about having an honest evaluation of the self, assessment of the self, and realizing that all the flaws in the self are the only responsible for my unhappiness. Outside situations are outside situations. There's nothing I can do about it, or very little I can do. But my flaws, my weaknesses, my defects create negativity in me. And if I can change my defect, if I can change intolerance for tolerance, if I can change impatience into patience, if I can change hopelessness into courage, and we can. I mean, this is what we do in Raj Yoga. This is the daily, I call it bread and butter of Raj Yoga, playing with our little messy self and making it into a better self. This is what we do. But the spirituality being activated will generate another reality in me. And it's my inner reality, how I see myself, how I feel about myself. That inner reality will allow me to respond differently to what's happening on the outside and on the inside, of course, because all these negative things popping up, of course, we're learning how to deal with it. So I don't know if it makes sense. There will be a chance for a few questions. What I would invite you to do at the moment maybe is just to take just 2-3 minutes, if that's okay. You can just take 2-3 minutes and I'll take you into a little meditative mood. And then I'm happy to entertain any questions or complaints. You can send them to the host. And I'll take the questions maybe and your comments. That would be great. So let's go into a little introspective mode. I know you're listening already for an hour, so apologize for all these words, but let's go into the voice of silence a little bit. You may want to even keep your eyes open. You can just take a little focal point. If there's a flower or anything around you, just to keep your eyes open so it's natural. If we close the eyes, we're going to disappear out of Zoom and out of the whole world. So let's stay together. We're all here together. Whatever is your environment, keep your eyes open. And we're just going to pay attention to the speed of our thoughts. And to begin my meditation, I try to think slowly. It's a beautiful relationship with the mind. Just to tell the mind, slow down. You can think, but think slowly, peacefully. And if I slow down the speed of my thoughts, very naturally, they will become more peaceful and more positive. So I think slowly, and I think peacefully. And I can feel that there is silence in between my thoughts. And I focus my attention on those very, very brief seconds of silence between thoughts. There's a thought of peace, then there's silence. And it almost feels as if my mind is happy to be given that moment of quietness. Just like when we massage the body, the whole body reacts. The tension goes away. So when I slow down the traffic in my mind, the mind starts to relax. Almost feel as if my mind is thanking me for not pushing it all the time. I'm giving a chance to my mind to just relax a little bit. And I can feel that I don't really need to think about anything. Right now, my mind is very happy not to think too much. Just to concentrate on the mind slowing down, thinking slowly, peacefully. And that inner space of silence and quietness is the perfect place for me to rediscover myself, away from the noise, away from the confusion of the mind. When I think slowly, when I think peacefully, there's no confusion. There's great clarity. And if I can just extend that moment of silence between thoughts, I know there is a lot of power, a lot of energy in that silence. It is not dead silence, but it is the silence of life, the silence of my heart, the silence of the soul. The silence that wanted to have a voice for so long, but there were too many thoughts, too much noise in my mind. Just to think slowly. So pleasant and so natural. I don't need to run anymore. Just to think slowly. To think peacefully. To give silence a voice. And to experience the energy, the power of silence. So I can go on like this for a long time. I don't know about you. I hope nobody's sleeping now. I tend to have a very soporific voice. People tell me your voice is so nice. Every time I listen to you, I sleep so well. I say, well, thank you. at least it's good. If anyone slept the whole time and if you slept for an hour, that sleep helps you to feel good, this is okay. I don't mind. I won't take it personal. So yes, I could go on like that.
So, Eric, really, so with so much lightness and positivity, I think you enabled everyone first not to fear facing fear. So, anyways, there are some few questions if you would
Sure.
mind to take them. So, the first one is boredom in doing something over and over again, leading to lack of enthusiasm. How to overcome it?
Start the beginning of the question again, please.
Boredom.
Boredom.
So it's about boredom is doing something over and over again, leading to lack of enthusiasm. How to overcome it?
Well, you come to Montreal. Next night, you come to Montreal. You come
Great.
here, and I'll tell you. I'm joking, but it's true. Oh, yes, you're very welcome. Whoever asked the question. Actually, when I was sharing in the beginning that my spiritual life and my professional life were helping each other, this is exactly one example. At work, I also train other people. I share training classes for other producers, cameramen, journalists. And the first lesson or the first aspect of the training is about creativity. And what we're lacking in our life is creativity a lot of time. Boredom is my creativity has been killed. There was an assassination and my creativity has been murdered at some point. Why? It would take a long time to explain, but we don't believe anymore. We can change. We think it's always going to be like this. There's nothing I can do. Whatever I change, they don't like it. There are many things that can kill creativity. Many aspects will kill creativity. But in spirituality and in every field of life, it's very good to recreate a feeling of creativity, which we can sometimes think outside of the box, provoke something so we don't have to stay the same all the time. Very briefly, this COVID did for many people the same thing. We got stuck in our place, isn't it? How many are staying in their own apartment, in their house, more than they never stayed in their whole life? I've never been so long in my apartment for the last 6 months. And in the beginning, I didn't do anything. And then, like most people, after a few months, what happened? You start to look at your kitchen and you say, why is it like this? Maybe I should put this the other way. I changed so many things in my apartment in the last 6 months, more than in the last 20 years. Why? Boredom. I was bored. I was here all the time. There was nothing to do except being on computer all the day, all time. So I changed things in my kitchen. Now I'm changing my dining room. I'm going to change my living room. I changed my bedroom. I clean things. What happened to me? Suddenly I saw other things, other possibilities. The same thing that was there for 20 years. I realized without buying anything, I could just change things around. I put the carpet that was in my bedroom in the kitchen. That's not something you do normally. And it fits perfectly. And I keep thinking, Eric, why you didn't do it earlier? It's so nice in the kitchen. It's vibrant, and the little dining table in the kitchen is suddenly so much more joy. I never thought of it. And my room is so much better without that carpet. So creativity changes everything. I have to be creative in my thoughts, creative in how I say things, creative in how I dress. I bought this myself recently. I never wear this kind of thing. And I said, why do I never wear this kind of thing? Let me wear it, see what happened. I love it. It's not me, but it's okay. We can just, definition of being mad is repeating the same thing, expecting the result to be different. That's the definition of being a little bit crazy. So I think we're all becoming very crazy in our own ways. So I would say creativity, enjoy creativity. Let's dare doing things we never thought we could do before. Decide one morning, today, I'm going to be kind. Let's say you're not usually kind, try to be kind. Or one day I decided for me, I'm not going to be kind today. That is very new for me. No, I'm stopping to please everybody. Today, if I don't feel like being kind, I won't be kind. For me, that is a big challenge because I tend to be more kind than normal. Try creativity. Or you come to Montreal. You're muted, sister, yeah. You have to turn on your mic, yeah. I don't read lips yet.
Yeah, okay. So it's done. We'll take it, yeah. So the next question, if one is only limiting themselves by not doing something, I think it's related, due to fear, isn't that giving into fear?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why I said fearlessness is not about avoiding fear. So not doing something by fear of having fear will not remove fear, and it will not be fair. So I don't think that not doing something because of fear is a good thing at all, or avoiding certain situations so we don't suffer the consequences of fear is not a good thing either. I didn't stop exposing myself. I didn't run away from these circles every time I had to say something. I had to put myself into that situation, but to find, actually, I didn't finish that story, but for me, the thing I discovered, which helped me tremendously, was humor. Be funny. And that changes the atmosphere and you feel less silly. And the more funny you are, the less you feel yourself to be silly. And that's okay. And then people laugh. And then you say, well, I was silly, but I didn't feel anything bad about it. So humor was a good, to break the ice, the way we call it, to break the ice. So if there's, let's say, tension in a relationship, instead of avoiding relationship, let me take it as an opportunity to say, I want to succeed. And I know when I succeed, I will feel so good, my self-esteem will increase, and I will not have the fear to confront the situation again. I'm trying to be short in my answer, so there could be more.
Yeah, okay. Yes, again, yeah. So the next question is, what is the spiritual way of looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs motivation? So just your views about this Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Start it again. What is my spiritual?
What is your view? Okay, and how do you see this in a spiritual way? No? This, the concept of Maslow's paradigm.
Maslow.
Yeah, Maslow.
I don't know
On the
that word.
needs, yes, on the needs.
On the
Maslow's
need.
needs, yeah. For
In hierarchy,
motivation. Yeah, got it?
I don't understand the question.
So, what is the spiritual way of looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Remember? So we have Maslow's hierarchy
Yeah,
of needs for motivation. Yeah.
well, we need to have a new device. We tend to measure the pressure of the self with a little device. So we need a device to reassess our needs, I guess. And, I defined one day in meditation what was for me the best mental posture to be in. I was in my balcony here in Montreal, and I don't have any exotic view on anything exotic at all. It's very ugly. It's brick walls, laundry from my neighbors in Montreal. That's what they do. They dry, their laundry in public. So it's a very ugly view. There's nothing to see. It's an old balcony. Paint has to be redone. And I was meditating, and suddenly I felt myself in a state of almost bliss. I was in a state of bliss. And I stayed in there for quite a long time, knowing, but I put the thought away that I would have to figure out, what is this? So I enjoyed it for quite a long time. And afterwards, I thought, what just happened? How could I feel so high? And the thought that came to me was, at the time, I was completely aligned with the present moment, which meant I didn't want the good time to repeat, to be longer, or I didn't have the fear that it will not happen again. So I realized that my perspective, because we talk about spiritual perspective, my spiritual view of how things should be, was motivated by, you need more, you need it to repeat, and if it doesn't, then you're not happy, you're scared. It's like you meet somebody. Some people, they meet you, we're going to spend 3 hours together, and before you even start saying something, they say, oh, but you're coming for such a short time, only 3 hours, and you have to leave again in 3 hours. When will I see you next? And I say, well, I just arrived. Can we have 3 hours without thinking about, I'm going to leave, I'm not going to happen again, I didn't see you for a long time. Let's live the moment present. So my needs, the hierarchies, if I understand properly the question, all these needs are very relative. And the point of consciousness, which is the highest, is to actually come to the conclusion that I need nothing, really. My conclusion of confronting death was actually that I need to come to terms with being fully satisfied with my life as it is now. And I did this exercise, which may be again answering your question. I did exercise to review my whole life in me. And it took me quite a few days. I tried to remember everything I lived up to this point. And I declared, wow, I did a lot of things in my life. So if my life were to end right now, I would say this life, as it is, was already a big gift. I went through so many beautiful things in my life. So I should be grateful and say my life as it is fine. Now, if I die, I'm happy, I'm okay, I'm at peace with it. I did that exercise. And the good thing is that I felt that every day afterwards was bonus. I already have in my life a beautiful life. I mean, it's not perfect at all, but I decided to be contented with that. And now I feel that everything else is just extra. So the needs are very, very little. We don't need much. And if we can say to the self, I need nothing, everything else becomes extra, becomes a blessing. I'm not sure I'm answering exactly the question, but hopefully. And if not answered properly, same answer, you come to Montreal. That's a good answer for all the questions.
Oh, that's a good excuse. Yeah, Eric. So we have a question coming from the Arabic group. So this is a question from that side. When one member of the family is sick or into fear or something else, how can I deal with this situation?
So how do I deal with the situation myself if somebody else has fear?
Yeah.
So somebody is sick or has fear.
Yeah, that
Deal
situation.
with their fear. Well, I don't know if we have time, but it's a very, very funny situation. You may want to turn off your mic, because it makes a lot of noise. So I was one day visiting in a hospital. A friend of us, she comes to the meditation center, and she was, suffering from long time from a deadly disease and progressive paralysis. So I've always seen her in a wheelchair. I've never seen her not in a wheelchair. And she was in a hospital, and I was called saying, Eric, she might just have a few hours left. She's really not well, so it would be nice if you come. So I rushed to the hospital, and when I reached, there were some friends from the meditation center who were there, and they were waiting for me, and they said, oh, we came yesterday, but we put a little sticker on the ceiling because she's lying down, so she could meditate. We put a little sticker, she can meditate on the ceiling. And so, oh, that's very, very nice, very good. So let's go and see her. So we go in a room, and then we see the sticker, and the lady is there, of course, so we approach. And that's the first time I see the body unfolded. So she's not in a wheelchair, so she's laying down. I never saw her like that. And there are tubes everywhere, and I can't even barely recognize her. So I say to the person, you know, I can't even, it's so changed. I mean, it's so different. And so I start to put my finger on the forehead and I say, you know, you're a soul, you should be peaceful, you know, everything is okay, remember God and this and the other. I came and I hold her hand and everything, but she cannot talk, she's like that. And I keep looking at her and thinking, I can't recognize her at all. And I look at the other guy and I says, I can't recognize her. And just in the meantime, the guy who was right with me, he looked at her bracelet. And then he says, Eric, it's the wrong person. It's not the one. It's not her. They changed her bed. It's not her. So whoever I was talking to, I had no idea who she was. She was just I don't know who. And she couldn't speak. So she was like, who are you? What are you talking to me about? What is this? The soul? And who are you three guys talking to me? And she was probably about to die. And she saw these three men talking to her about the soul, living in peace, and everything is okay, life is okay. We thought it was our friend because they moved her without telling us. And, you know, with all the tubes, we thought she was her. So my two other friends, they were, you know, how to call it, they were not good. They left, they couldn't hold their laughing, you know, so they left quickly. And they left me alone with this poor lady to whom I said, oh, I'm sorry. I think we just realized you are not the one we thought. I'm sorry. But everything I told you is still okay. It's still, you're still a soul. Don't worry. Everything is fine. Life is good. You know, but I have to go because the one I came to see is dying in the other room. So we left. And then actually the one we came to see was not dying at all. And she was actually out of her bed in a wheelchair. And when we told her that for the last 15 minutes, we gave condolences to someone that we didn't know. But the nurses told us afterwards, she said, I don't know what you told that person, but she really, you know, enjoyed it very, very much. And she felt really, really much better, even she doesn't know you. So my point was, very often when people have fear, we go into their fear. And this is the worst thing to do, is to give power to the fear of somebody else. And sometimes we think it's called empathy, but it's not empathy. It's just not knowing what to do with the fear of somebody else. And the best thing sometimes to break the fear or to help somebody who has fear is to completely change the perspective, the panoramic view of the person. I accompanied a lot of people in hospital, and one of the men that we went to visit many times, he used to tell us, you know, I like when the yogis come to see me because they make me laugh. He knew he was dying. He had cancer. He knew he was dying. And he says, when my family comes, they make me so scared. They cry all the time. They make me totally depressed. I don't want to see them anymore. I said, well, you have to see them. But he said, when you yogis come, we laugh, we play, you tell us the stupid jokes. I just bring him somewhere else. And we all knew he was going to die, but we didn't give any power to the fear. We gave power to another reality, life. That's what I said in the beginning. Loving life makes me stop having fear of death. I really believe that. But yeah, when you go to see somebody at the hospital, first look at the bracelet to make sure this is the proper name.
Yeah, so really humor makes a difference. And this is the last question, Eric. So we have gone over time, yeah, but last question. Are fears manifestations of traumas of past life? Could you throw some light on it?
Very interesting question. Again, you should come to Montreal, but if you don't have a chance, many fears can come. I had a friend, he did what they called hypnosis, and he took people into regressive life. So I know it's a belief system. Many people don't believe in reincarnation, other people believe. It's not the point. For me, believing is giving power to a thought, right? To believe is to give power to a thought. And ultimately, I feel I need to choose which thoughts I want to give power to. So if it helps me to think that in my previous birth, I suffered something, and that maybe this pain that comes from another birth manifests itself today in this birth, well, let me use that concept and use it in such a way that I can change my thinking. And it's not because I experienced something in a previous birth, I have to experience it again in this birth. So why is it coming back to this birth? Well, let me use the thought, now it's coming back so I can settle it. Maybe I didn't settle it before. So if you don't believe in past birth, just say it comes from the past, whatever past it is, with my parents, in the womb maybe, or in my youth, or from a previous birth. But if it comes back again today in the present, let me think of it as it's coming now so I can settle it. So instead of refusing this thought to come, instead of reacting or repressing that thought, I accept it and I say, yes, come. You want to come? Come. But now we're going to do something right about it. And I'm going to finally settle the issue. So allow the thought to come, even if it's from previous birth, and say, I'm glad you're coming. Now we're going to settle it. How? To find the proper value, the proper strength that I need to have to respond to it properly. Self-esteem, courage, confidence, faith in the self, trust in the self, forgiveness, maybe something to forgive, if it's coming back from the past. So yeah, that's good. It's a very good question.
Okay, Eric, so there is a persistent request for this question. So yeah, how to deal with professional fear, which means for her is fear of failure. Fear of failure.
I think that for me, the avenue would be honesty, real honesty with the self. Because what happens when there's fear of failure is that we're just giving power to the way we measure success. And that power we give to the way we measure success disempower how we feel about who we are, regardless of our failure or our success. And honesty helps us to have what we call in spirituality equanimity. Either I fail or I succeed doesn't change who I am. I am not the performance. I am the being who performs. And I love tennis. I play a lot of tennis and I love playing tennis. And you fail a lot in tennis, believe me. If they could just remove the net in between, it would be better. But they put a net right in the middle. It's a very annoying thing. And all the balls keep going into the net, of course. Failing or failure is only defined by the power I give to the performance, which removes the power I'm supposed to give to the performer, the actor. So it's much better to reaffirm that I'm a good person, that I have good values in my life, that I mean well, that I have good intention, to reconsolidate the feeling about the self and to become a little bit detached from the performance, because I know the performance will increase if I feel better about who I am. If I'm performing out of fear, chances of failing are higher. If I perform out of confidence, chances of succeeding are higher. So I'm not too focused on the performance, but on the quality of the performer, which is how I feel about myself. And then if I succeed or not, if I'm honest, I will not be affected the same way. I'll accept failure and I'll accept success, but I don't translate failure into bad feeling or success into, being totally crazy about it without being moderated. In short.
So, Eric, I think we can go on and on, but I think everyone, if you have been looking at the comments, almost everyone had been expressing their gratitude. Yeah, so it was really great. So it was an evening that is, I would say, so full of inspiration, so full of humor, so full of a lot of things that we can pocket on, we can take from you, from the journey that you have been, and from the way you are showing us in terms of your speaking. And overall, we would say that there is no reason to fear how to face fear. So instead of denying, instead of running away, so it's good to face it. And you have presented really a very practical, inspiring way to join you in this journey. So as you said, so instead of just letting go life as the way as life, but we can choose to connect with the beauty of life. So thank you for the insights that you have presented us tonight. So can we also invite you over to Middle East, okay, to Bahrain? Yeah, so I think it's better. You can meet more, isn't it? No? So we love to see you at some point in time, if not in here. So when you come over to Bahrain. So really, it was a very wonderful presentation that would really inspire and motivate us to move on no matter what. Thank you so much. In behalf of everyone, Eric, thank you so much.
Thank you to you for inviting me. Thank you to each one of you listening and watching. I'm really, really happy. I wish I would have seen you and exchanged physically. I'm happy that I'm sure you're all there. So from the heart, I give you all my greetings. Yeah, it's good. Some are opening their cameras so I can say hello and visible. I didn't dare asking you to open your camera in the beginning, but sometimes that's what I do. And I tell everyone, please turn on your camera so we can connect physically. But I don't want to intrude into your living rooms. But nice to see you all. Thank you from the heart for having me and spending all the time listening to this French guy talking. So all the best to each one of you. Greetings, blessings, and we may meet again. So yes. I know you have a program that you want to announce.
Stay safe. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.